Imagine unexpectedly standing at the threshold between life and death, where the very foundations of your beliefs are challenged by an encounter that defies everything you understand. This is the story of a rabbi, a respected leader grounded in his faith, who faced a near-death experience, NDE, so profound that it left him grappling with truths that reshaped his understanding of the world. This narrative explores an extraordinary event that bridges the gap between two major religions, highlighting a moment of intense personal revelation and spiritual awakening. The rabbi in our story was not just a religious leader but a beacon in his community, known for his deep commitment to his faith and his profound knowledge of Jewish texts. His life had been devoted to teaching and living according to the traditions and laws passed down through generations. His belief system was firmly rooted in Judaism, and he had spent much of his life interpreting the Torah and providing guidance based on its teachings. Like many of us, the rabbi had his perceptions and understanding of the afterlife, which were firmly embedded within the Jewish concept of Olam Haba, or the world to come. He had never felt the need to explore beyond these beliefs, as they provided him with comfort and a strong framework for understanding the moral and spiritual dimensions of life. Yet, nothing had prepared him for the experience that would not only test the very core of his beliefs but also expand his understanding of the divine in an entirely unexpected way. On a day like any other, the rabbi was engaged in his routine duties, teaching and counseling his community with the same dedication he always showed. However, without any warning, he was struck by a severe medical crisis that necessitated immediate hospitalization. As he was rushed to the hospital, the world around him blurred into a haze of lights and distant sounds, marking the beginning of an experience that would transcend his understanding of life and spirituality. In the hospital, as medical professionals worked tirelessly, the rabbi slipped into a state that bordered between life and death. His condition stabilized temporarily, but his consciousness had started on a journey far removed from the sterile surroundings of a hospital room. This unexpected journey was not through realms of fear or anguish but toward an encounter that would challenge everything he knew about the divine and the afterlife. While he lay unconscious, the rabbi experienced what many describe as the beginning of an NDE. A sensation of being detached from his physical body and moving towards an overwhelming light. This experience, common in many near-death testimonies, was both exhilarating and serene, filled with an indescribable peace that seemed to wash away all the worries of the physical world. It was not the peaceful light or the sensation of detachment that marked the true beginning of his transformative experience. It was the figure that appeared before him, a figure radiant and commanding, yet exuding an immense sense of love and understanding. To his utmost surprise, the rabbi recognized this figure as Jesus, a central figure in Christianity, unexpected and astonishing in its implications given his own deep-seated Jewish beliefs. This encounter was not just a fleeting moment but a profound communication that brought forward messages laden with universal love, forgiveness, and a deep connection that transcends the boundaries of any single faith. The rabbi, standing at the crossroads of life and death, found himself enveloped in a dialogue that would question and ultimately expand his spiritual horizons. There was no spoken language, yet the message was clear and profoundly articulate. It spoke of the interconnectedness of all beings, the intrinsic love that forms the foundation of the universe, and the importance of compassion and forgiveness. These themes, while resonant with the core values of many religions, were presented in a context that was startlingly new to the rabbi, framed by the presence of a figure he had never expected to encounter. The rabbi stood in the presence of what felt like a boundless energy, radiating an overwhelming sense of peace and wisdom. It was unlike anything he had ever known, yet there was a deep familiarity in the presence before him. His mind struggled to comprehend what was unfolding. He had always adhered to his faith with conviction, yet here, in this moment beyond life, he was facing something entirely different from what he had been taught to expect. He recognized the figure before him as Jesus. The realization struck with immense force, leaving him in disbelief. This was not a vision he had ever anticipated. His faith had never aligned with Christian teachings, yet the presence was undeniable. The moment felt both surreal and absolute. The figure did not impose, nor did it demand. It stood in quiet certainty, conveying something beyond words. The rabbi felt an overwhelming awareness that he was witnessing a truth he had never considered. Questions filled his mind, but before he could form them, understanding came in waves. The presence communicated without speech, yet every word was clear. The rabbi was shown that love is the foundation of all existence, that forgiveness is not just an act but a state of being. And that all people are connected beyond the boundaries they create. He was made to see how divisions, judgments, and rigid beliefs limit the understanding of the divine. The vision revealed a reality where all faiths, all traditions, and all people are woven into a single purpose: to love, to heal, and to recognize the divinity in every soul. The rabbi felt his heart open in ways he had never known. His beliefs were not being discarded, but they were expanding beyond what he had considered possible. This truth was not meant to challenge his faith but to reveal that the divine is beyond any single perspective. It was an experience so profound that it left him with a sense of responsibility. He had been given knowledge that could not be ignored. This was not just an encounter. It was a revelation that would change everything. As the message settled within him, the rabbi felt a shift. The presence that had filled the space around him began to fade, and an intense pull brought him back toward his physical body. The peace and clarity he had experienced were replaced by the weight of reality. His senses reawakened, and he became aware of the sounds and movements in the hospital room. He had returned, but everything was different. His body was weak, but his mind was overwhelmed by the experience. He had been shown something that conflicted with everything he had once held as absolute. The certainty of his beliefs had been challenged, not by force, but by an undeniable encounter that left no room for doubt. He lay in silence, replaying every moment, knowing that his life had been forever altered. The experience was too vivid, too real to dismiss. In the days that followed, the rabbi struggled with how to share what had happened. He had always spoken with conviction, rooted in tradition. But this was something beyond what he had ever known. He understood the risk of speaking about it openly. Some would dismiss it, others might question his faith, and many would be unwilling to accept what he had seen. Despite these concerns, he knew he could not remain silent. The truth of what he had witnessed carried a responsibility. He began to speak cautiously, choosing his words carefully, trying to explain the depth of what he had experienced without diminishing its meaning. Some listened with curiosity, others with skepticism, but no one could deny the sincerity in his voice. The more he spoke, the more he realized that his experience was not about proving anything but about offering a perspective that might open hearts. It was not a call to abandon faith but to expand understanding. His message was simple: love is greater than division, and the divine is beyond the boundaries that people create. His words resonated with some and were met with resistance by others, but he knew that sharing the truth was the only path forward. As the rabbi reflected on his experience, he realized that the message he received carried deeper implications than he had initially understood. His encounter challenged the rigid divisions that often separate people based on belief systems. He had always followed a structured path, certain of what lay ahead. But what he witnessed suggested that the divine presence was far greater than any doctrine could fully describe. This realization led him to question long-held assumptions, not to reject his faith, but to recognize that spiritual truth extends beyond human definitions. The idea that love and unity form the foundation of existence was not new. Yet the way it had been revealed to him made it impossible to ignore. It was no longer just a teaching, it was something he had experienced firsthand. The boundaries between different faiths appeared less significant in the face of what he now knew. The focus shifted from theological differences to a deeper understanding of the divine as an ever-present force of compassion and wisdom. The impact of the experience did not end with his return to the physical world. It changed the way he viewed life, relationships, and his purpose. He no longer approached faith with the same rigid certainty but with an openness that allowed room for deeper understanding. Conversations that he once engaged in with strict adherence to doctrine now carried a sense of humility and curiosity. His interactions with others became more centered on the values he had been shown: compassion, forgiveness, and unity. Rather than seeking to convince others of one perspective, he encouraged reflection and inner awareness. The shift in his approach was not about disregarding the past but about integrating what he had learned into every aspect of his life. His story was not meant to challenge anyone's beliefs but to share an experience that had reshaped his own. Whether others accepted it or not was beyond his control, but he knew that his purpose was to speak with honesty about what he had seen. The rabbi's experience remained with him, not as a memory that faded with time but as a reality that shaped every thought and action. What he once believed to be absolute had been expanded by something he could not explain through traditional teachings. The encounter was not meant to replace his faith but to add depth to his understanding of what it truly means to connect with the divine. His story was not about proving one belief over another but about acknowledging that there is more to existence than what is seen and understood. The message he received was clear: love and unity transcend the barriers that people create. Though many struggled to accept his words, he knew that the experience had given him something far greater than certainty. It had given him awareness. The rabbi's account invites reflection on the nature of faith, the afterlife, and the connections between all beliefs. His story raises questions that cannot be easily answered but are worth considering. It challenges the idea that spiritual truth can be confined to one path and encourages an open mind toward the mysteries that exist beyond this world. This is not just a story about one person's experience. It is an opportunity to reflect on what lies beyond life, what connects all people, and what it truly means to seek understanding. Whether one believes in the rabbi's experience or not, the message remains the same. Love is the foundation of everything, and the search for truth is never limited to one perspective.